All right, everybody. Welcome back to On a Water Break, and I'm your host, Steve McCarrick, and today we're here on a water break with Fourth Block Music. I've got
8 off the mat and go.
Welcome to On a Water Break, the podcast where we talk everything marching arts.
Everyone, bring it in. It's time for a water break.
got the two creators behind the scenes of Fourth Block Music, Rosen and Bronson with me, and we're excited to talk about some independent art within the marching arts. So, everybody, welcome Rosen and Bronson.
What's up? What's up?
Yeah, thank you guys for hopping on the call. So, I imagine many of our listeners rather, might not have been aware of you guys yet. I don't do a whole lot of like crossing the wires between the stuff I do with the Base and the stuff I do with the podcast. But why don't we get started here? Before we get into more about what Fourth Block Music is about, let's go through our 32 count life stories so that our listeners can kind of learn a bit more about who each of you guys are and what you do in the marching arts. Lou, do you want to get us started with your 32 counts?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So
should this be like about me or about Fourth Block or like
this is whatever you can fit in 30 seconds.
Cool.
Honestly, you're gonna get Aiden in from the Met and then just catch us up to speed about who you are.
Cool.
All right, Aiden in off the Met.
What's up? We're Fourth Block. Me and Bronson. We make content for Instagram, YouTube. Fourth Block was sort of born out of my attempts in fusing the things I was doing with marching percussion, with a lot of things I was doing kind of 2018 through 2022 with electronic music. I marched in the horn line at Vanguard Cadets, Santa Clara Vanguard, when I was really young, probably too young, and then I kind of got way out of that world, started getting into all different types of music, did a lot of orchestral stuff, did a lot of choir stuff, started producing electronic music. In 2018, I joined Elon Percussion and just sort of randomly did a season on bass drum. That was how I linked up with Bronson. Yeah, nice. And from there, I was just sort of, as I continued making electronic music from there, I more and more wanted to see what the potential was of marching percussion to be a part of that. And that's something we're kind of sort of still figuring out.
Well, I think you guys are doing a pretty decent job of figuring it out. I mean, when you lay it out like that, it almost sounds like it's a very like casual idea. But as you guys have kind of laid it into practice, especially through your like dedication to make a lot of content on it, like you've really, I think, made your own brand and your own thing for like independent marching content, which it's not really, it's a budding type of thing out there. So we'll get back to talking more about Fourth Block in a second, but Bronson, why don't you also catch our listeners up to speed?
Absolutely. All right.
Your background, who you are, and maybe like your history in the marching arts.
All right, cool. So my name is Bronson Gold. I come from Reno Valley, California. So my background in the marching arts pretty much started when I was in middle school. I kind of would skip my 6th period class to go check out the high school drumline rehearsals. Made it to the winter or the spring concert. Ended up doing high school band, and then did drum corps during that time long when I was 16, and then ended up marching Cavaliers like during COVID. When I aged out. Now I just teach pretty much.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah, you got that, man. I went way over the
Yeah, you were like the life story in like a movement and a half. But
for real.
It's hard. It's like, I'm gonna get you to tell me everything about you in 30 seconds. Yeah. Can't do that possibly. So why don't we break it down a little bit further then from there? When did you guys first like make Fourth Block Music, and what was like the genesis of the idea?
It was sort of something that I came up with. I I started out on my own with making a few full-length like EDM tracks with marching snare drum on them. So that kind of happened between like 2020, like right at the beginning of the pandemic, through like the middle of 2021. And that was interesting. They're like the first couple tracks, if you listen back to them, it's like I had the snare drum EQ'd like so high it was basically just like coming through as like a trap hi-hat sound. Like,
yeah, okay.
That's that low-key cringe. Like I can't even go back and listen to those tracks anymore.
That's the ground that you had to forge through a little bit, though, because like in a lot of ways, I think what you're doing is something that I at least never saw anyone like really do in a very serious way before like you guys started doing it. Do you think like was there any content that maybe like inspired you, or was this more of like an idea that came to you where you were like, look, I just really want to do this. I've never seen anyone do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, all credit to like BYOS and like that crew for and others, you know, in that space. But they're, I think, really the main ones that laid the groundwork for for marching percussion as like, I guess, an internet content thing, but also like really developing the potential for that to be the style of drumming to be its own thing outside of the competitive activity.
Right, because like when you're designing outside of the competitive activity, it's like a whole different set of like boxes you want to check, essentially. Like,
yeah, absolutely. There's definitely there definitely are boxes still. It's definitely not like you can get out there and be like, okay, cool, we can do whatever we want with this. But like, you know, if you're trying to create in any kind of genre or style, there's like the inherent limitations of that. And then, of course, when you're outside the structure of the competitive activity, it's just like, how do we find equipment? How do we coordinate people? If we're trying to get multiple people together to record, like, how are we going to make that happen? Like, I think those are,
Why don't we go through that process a little bit by bit? Because, like, Lou, it seems like you probably do a lot of, like, production on this, but, like, Bronson, I'm sure you're also involved in, like, different creative aspects of what's going on beyond just, like, where I've seen you playing instruments in the videos and things like that.
I
so, like, how does a project come together?
It's pretty crude, and I'm not that smart, but I kind of like to compare myself to like Rick. You familiar with Rick Rubin? He kind of just sits there, just doesn't really play an instrument. I mean, I obviously play an instrument, but usually during the production of tracks, like Lou usually has like 90% of it done, and then I'll show up and be like, yeah, maybe we put this here, maybe we change this, put this in the like towards the end, and then they're like, cool, and then we do it, and then Lou usually is inspired and adds something else to it, and then usually just kind of just motivates, keeps the ball rolling, and then it helps that we live together.
That like process of bouncing ideas is so helpful, though. Oh, okay. Another detail that I that makes sense why you guys do all this stuff together. That's cool, though. You guys can probably see behind me. I've never even picked up the camera since I've set up this room, but we've got like 2 drum sets set up behind us. So
that's
it totally can relate to the idea of like making art with roommates. It's fun.
That's great.
But
your whole background, I love that elephant tapestry.
It's so cool. I wish I had the remote handy. But when we have like multiple colors going, like the spectrum of colors, since that thing's got like a bunch of different splotches of colors, it kind of looks like it's morphing in a really trippy way while like the colors rotate through. It's cool, man. I've been like been itching to make a cool little stew for like a year since we've started this podcast. So like it's nice to have a cool thank you. But anyway, so you guys write the project initially, and then actually recording it is a wildly different experience than a regular like band performance or a band rehearsal. Like I actually know from like making a few licks of my own, like that doing band in this context feels more like being an artist in a studio, where it's like I'm gonna punch in, maybe like we're gonna start here, record like a really fine audio of like this bar, and then we're gonna like, it's a whole big artistic process there. So when you guys are recording, maybe compare and contrast how that like varies compared to like being in rehearsal or performing. What's different being in a
at least for
marching
me,
arts studio?
The only performance, or I guess the only like set of videos that involved like actual sheet music was where the bass drum tracks, the curfewing and starting 5. But everything else, pretty much, I'd say the consistent is just you have to be focused all the way through, like towards the end of the track. You could like I like to just play rolls a lot, especially on surfaces in which it's not very easy to. And it's very, with hot rods, or a couch, what's it called? But it was
nice.
He did drum on a couch recently. It was pretty lit.
Reminds me of like the old school chop outs. I used to see guys in like Facebook that were like 50 would post on like marching arts pages, them just like playing the most massive diddles I've ever seen on their thigh. And I'm like, dude,
my God,
like that's an insane way to build chops. What were you doing in the 90s?
Oh my
like, well, why? Crazy. But anyway, so you guys work with a bunch of other folks on at least the bass drum videos. Is there any aspect to Fourth Block where you're trying to like build maybe sort of a platform for people to be able to express like their marching arts skill after aging out? Is that maybe something that you guys consider as well, or what do you guys kind of think the future looks like for Fourth Block music in that regard?
In short, yes. Like in a way, it feels like this project is still like in its really early days, even though it's been out there for like over 2 years now. Like we want to get bigger things going, both in terms of like the number of people we're able to have on the music, and also like creating more long form content, like releasing more actual songs on like streaming and stuff, getting more content onto YouTube, expanding the video aspect of what we do. That's like something Bronson has like contributed to so much. Like I've never been extremely passionate about like the video side of things. Like I have all the tools and like I know how to use them. I feel like every time I'm doing that, it's always just kind of, what do I need to do to like get the music across? And like Bronson has brought a whole different creativity to that side of the process, and like I'm really interested to see where we can go from there, how we can use the visual aspect of that in terms of like video production to elevate what we're doing.
Right. It almost seems like there's a bit of a parallel there to like putting together a marching show where like, you know, after a little while you get to start thinking about the vis of this production and how you can like elevate the music through the vis, or how you can elevate the vis through the music.
Project And I was just doing camera work for it, and I did notice like doing storyboarding, figuring out the camera, like what the camera moves I want to do with the music. It's very, very similar to like writing drill. Only instead of writing the performers where the performer's going, you're writing where the audience is going to be, and it feels like a very different but pretty similar thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that's a totally flipped perspective in a way. Or you can apply a lot of the same ideas and things like that. Like, it's actually like really hard in like a real life performance to draw the eye certain places and to like make sure people are paying attention to what they're supposed to pay attention to. But like, we as band people have a lot more ability to say like, hey, this is exactly what I want you to pay attention to when I'm making like a video for an Instagram reel or something like that. Do you ever like kind of sit around and think like, man, this would be really cool if we reach this point, we got some more like we grew a little bit more, we might be able to do this. Is there any like sort of music video idea that you think might be cool, Bronson?
A bunch of equipment. I think it would be great to go to the Bahamas and get a video. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know that we have a huge listener base. I was just looking at the stats.
I mean,
huge
in terms
listener
of
base
like
in the
video
Bahamas
production,
on yachts.
like obviously we're pretty much just using iPhones. Luckily, the newer iPhones have 4K 60 frames per second cameras. You can, especially if. And then we luckily
iPhone give us
have
money.
Pretty decent audio equipment, but I would say like in terms of video production, like more camera equipment, we have some like lighting stuff that we've recently like invested in. But yeah, obviously that and just access to locations is really just the hard part, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Because I guess when you're like going to show up someplace and drum, it's kind of hard to be low key. It's like
we got kicked out of our location when we were filming Curfew. Like we started filming a little bit later in the day than we'd intended, and we got reached a point where it's like, I think we just need to come back in the morning and finish this up. So we were like we recorded the whole thing in this like studio space in this like warehouse park type complex. So we were recording the video outside the next morning, and like the manager comes in and is like, hey, we've got some complaints, like you can't be doing this out here. So we like went into the lobby of our studio space and just like got everything set up really quickly, and just like that. I think that has to be one of my favorite moments of like being a part of Fourth Block. Like everyone was just like on, like everyone was setting up cameras and like setting up the drums, and I was all I'm just kind of able to like
my favorite
step
thing
back
about that
like,
is
okay,
I was moving
this all looks good.
While we're making
it's
that video.
happening.
And I decided I had like plastic plants, like fake plants, that I thought would look cool in the background. So you could see like plants in there just randomly. Oh yeah, no, I just
don't even think that like registered to me at the time. But
that's set design.
I feel like that also relates back to the fact that like when we're trying to get like a bigger ensemble, just like a bass line or like a snare line or whatever, and the people in the ensemble are like people who are also active in the marching activity. Like you only get a few opportunities throughout the year to do that kind of stuff. Like because everyone is either doing it's like the drum corps to fall band to indoor cycle just doesn't stop. So it's like, okay, it can do like Thanksgiving break, maybe Christmas break, spring break, maybe there's some time in May, maybe there's some time like right after the DCI season. And then of course you get like everyone, it's like everyone's one break is right there. And it, you know, I'm like really grateful that people have like made the time in those times to make that happen. It's also like, yeah, people are moving during that time. It's
crazy how we
taking
like
that moment to like also get their life together. So
that is cool that they would come out in that very little bit of free time that they do have. I know exactly what you mean, because I feel like all of us band people like give up all of our free time to do band, which like maybe we should learn to take a step back. Right. But I don't see myself doing it. I just signed up to probably do even more band than I was doing before. Can't get away. Cannot get away.
Yeah. Capitalism does make it so our free time is extremely limited.
Well, maybe perhaps someday Fourth Block would get some gigs in paid opportunities to do some more music. Do you ever think like so I imagine it seems like you guys probably already have like dreamt about this sort of a thing, but do you ever think about like, could Fourth Block play a music festival? Like,
if we had enough resources, like, yeah, if we were able to create, you know, a full set's worth of music and like,
yeah, for sure.
Get the biggest thing is just like rehearsal time. Like,
yeah,
like I mean, think about point, like indoor, like a drum corps show. It's like we put in all this rehearsal time to do a show that's like 11 minutes long, and then think about like a festival set. It's like, cool, that's like 30 minutes minimum. Like, what does the rehearsal process need to look like? And obviously, like, that's kind of been done before with
kind of like Blast.
Like Blast, yeah, exactly. I do have the corps director of the drum corps that I used to work at. Shout out Golden Empire. Shout out Open Class. Yeah, but yeah, he was part of Blast a long time ago, so I've been meaning to find a time to just like get up there and talk to him about that and that whole process.
That would be cool. I should see if I could get Blast people on the show sometime. I honestly didn't even know that like Blast was still a thing, because I was under the impression throughout most of my marching career that like Blast happened, it was a thing for a little bit and then it stopped, but like it seems like it's coming back. Yeah, I think it's like touring internationally maybe or something.
I know they do things in Japan every once in a while. Yeah,
which is crazy. That's like what I think like the ultimate aspiration for something like what you guys are running would be, though, at least looking in from the outside. It's not even like that you would be rehearsing for one event. It would be like to have a performing professional paid ensemble for the marching arts. It's independent in the sense that it doesn't compete, but it's not independent in the sense that it's an illegitimate or small and not
I feel like when you look
real
at
ensemble,
WGI,
if you know what I'm saying.
And the intention of that activity, it's less about, well, it's very much about entertainment and producing a very entertaining product, but at the end of the day, there's some groups their intention is not to win drums or DCI finals or WGI finals. It's to pretty much, I mean, it was started to enrich, youth development and pretty much just make sure people don't grow up to be bad people, for lack of a better word. And I feel like what we're trying to do, since it's less of a like competitive thing, we're here more so to make music, like as soon as I aged out, I was a huge stickler on, everything needs to be good technique, everything needs to be good, but like everything needs to have the best sound quality. And then as I've gotten like older, the more I've done it, I'm like, the focus should really just be on what's entertaining.
I mean, that's like a perspective that I think that I gained both through college band, but also through Eagles Drumline, which is like that for most of the world, like they couldn't really care
Yeah.
about the things that we are trained to care about in like doing marching arts. It's just like completely irrelevant and unnoticeable in some senses to like drunk people at an Eagles game that the snare line in the Eagles drum line is clean. You know, like in a very literal sense, it's actually better for someone to break in the Eagles drum line and do something entertaining or funny than it is for them to even stay in the role.
Hey everyone, it's Jeremy, and here are your announcements coming from the box. Don't miss all of our bonus content, including On a Water Break in Rhinestones with your host Lexi Duda, exploring the world of the twirlers. Don't miss Parades and Drum Majors at Step Off with your host Jack Goudreau, and get lost in translation with your host Cynthia Bernard, exploring all the words that confuse all of us in the marching arts all across the world. And go Behind the Lens with marching arts photographers all across the country with your host, Chris Marr. Plenty more bonus content from On a Water Break, so listen anywhere you get your podcasts. If you want to be on a Water Break as a guest, or you know somebody that would make a great guest for On a Water Break, email us at onawaterbreakpodcast@gmail.com.
So it's an entirely different set of things you're designing for. I actually want to bring it back. You were talking about Rick Rubin earlier. And Rick Rubin has a perspective on all this that's basically like, when you're designing art as an artist, you shouldn't be designing art for what other people want to hear. And his belief is that in doing so, you're going to create worse art that no one will actually really want to listen to. And that what makes art good is that you're designing something that you think has value like that. By designing music in marching arts for competition, we're directly designing for what the judges want our art to be, instead of designing inherently for just what we as the artist think is the most interesting or creative or entertaining decision we could make. So that's why projects like what you guys do really excite me, is I think that you have the opportunity to actually be creative and actually do things that are cool to the average person that the Blue Devils or the Blue Coats could never do. They would never do. I mean, these ensembles are the best at taking risks in the activity, but in a lot of ways, they could never do the things that you two do. Which is a bit of that's one way to put it. I'm sure you're laughing a little, but but the more and more it grows.
Yeah. No, there's something to be said for just recording an entire track in one day. And it's the standard of cleanliness is not going to be as high, but there's still such a pressure on, I imagine, on the performer end, it's still got to be there, because it's we only have just 20-30 minutes to record this chunk, and we've got to move on to the next and to the next. And that's also been just something I've been learning the whole time, is how to write and design for the resources we have and the time we have when we're going to record, and figuring out how to do things that will be entertaining and will be effective without on a video medium without necessarily being super hard.
Yeah.
Well, also
it doesn't always have to be. You're exactly right. So something I've been curious about always with you guys too, you talked about you only have 20-30 minutes to record a chunk and then you've got to move on. When I'm doing this sort of what I would consider a drumline studio project, not a live piece of drumline art necessarily, and it's not for competitive band either, I don't really feel too bad about cleaning something up in the DAW. So, like, to what extent do you guys like try to clean up the recorded product in the DAW, and then to what extent do you guys like process the audio?
Yeah, and there's a lot of post production work that goes into it for sure. I think the bass line especially, there was a lot of processing going into it just to figure out how to make it speak on, you know, phone speakers, like whatever kind of speakers that most people are going to be listening to that don't like have those frequencies. So like if you were to isolate just the bass stem from like the track, it would sound like really weird and distorted and not like bass drums at all, but you know, sounds fine once we get to it. We've got the snare line track coming out soon. That's definitely way easier just because of like the frequency range.
It reads better.
But yeah, there is only so much cleaning up you can do in post production, and like
one thing you can't clean.
Way to do it really is to just.
I would say that is to go back on the earlier topic.
But
I will say in the process, it is pretty difficult to be consistent with the music and video aspect. So a lot of people say like I would say the music the sound, because of how it is processed to sound good for phone speakers, which I'd say there's a limit when it comes to lot videos, you know, where also lot videos aren't recorded with mics close up. Pretty much you have to be consistent, and that is the most relatable thing when it comes to doing in the activity.
Yeah, in that sense, that is a direct translation. There's nothing different there. The best rep you can get is going to still be the best rep you can get, whether or not you have the ability to apply all these like post-processing effects. It's also like there's only so many things that you can clean. Like in the bass drum world, for instance, you can't really like post-process clean a unison. It's just not gonna be possible. It's going to sound so murky, and these sounds are going to overlap. You could probably clean up your squig, like as long as it wasn't outrageously bad. You'd have the space between those transient sounds, and you could like map it out to the grid, and you could make it happen. But other things you just have to actually
like most
be
of
good.
what we
like playing together,
like
you can't really fake like playing together.
In those baseline projects are just unisons.
Yep. Which is funny, that's exactly what real life bass drumming is too. The splits are easy, and whether or not they're dirty or clean, it's harder to tell, but the unison, you'll know. You'll hear that was bad. I want to nerd out with for a second. Lou, as a producer, I want to nerd out for a second. Can you tell me about like the different specific like sorts of things you do to process at least the bass sound in particular? Like what kind of plugins, what you kind of do to it?
I use Ableton Live, so a lot of it is at least with, you know, making the low end speak on speakers. It's just like the stock Ableton Live saturator plugin. What I'll do for my bass drum tracks too, I will make like an audio effect rack and basically separate the bass channel into like the high end and the low end. So like the attack and the resonance of the drums. And just work with those completely independently.
So in that way, are you like trying to work with the transient of the sound and the long tail of the sound in like a different way almost?
Saturator I use is like specific to the low end to bring more like harmonics to that. I, you know, don't put that on like the higher frequency, on like the attack of the drum. You know, that is already speaking. I mean, with bass drum, that's always the struggle of like how much, because obviously the rhythms will speak more if you just like turn up the high end a lot, but then also you lose the splits and it all just kind of like starts to sound a little bit like one drum. I feel like I went a little too much in that direction with starting 5, and then I think when we mixed Curfew, I went a little bit too much on the other end. So especially on like the Spotify version of the track, it's like harder. It's a little bit harder to hear the drums, but I think flow and like melody of the splits comes through a little more clearly.
Yeah, so like what I'm pulling up right now to look at is some of the comments from that starting 5 music video, which
my God.
not to brag to the audience of On a Water Break, but that is like by far the most successful video that we have ever had on my like page that I run for bass drumming, the Bass page.
Bass.
Let's see where we're at with that one right now. I think it's got like 40,000 likes, 717,000 plays. The comments on here are insane because people are trying to figure out why it sounds so good, but most people don't know about like audio processing and things like that. So from being in that world a little bit, I knew it. I had it in my head. I was like, they're processing it in the DAW. It sounds so good because these frequencies are speaking in a way that like it wouldn't naturally, which is not a knock to it in the way that I see it. Like, I think that's a good thing, and what you should do if you're doing like an independent bass drum project is like bring to life the sound of the bass drum through the power of like the different modern tools we have for audio production and things like that. But dude, there's all sorts of comments on here. People are saying like, this is definitely MIDI, bro.
It saved me a lot of hours.
Other people saying,
right.
Other people calling it the cleanest, best bass line they've ever seen. Which, like, I'm sure you guys would agree. It's like, thanks, but that's a little bit of like, we practiced for like a day and recorded.
Nah, they're the best.
Yeah, they're the best bass line ever. But, but no, dude, it's cool. It's like, this is what I think we need more of in the marching arts is like, it's this like commitment to saying like, no, we need to be in real life evaluating the pure tone of this instrument for how excellent it is on a scale of 0 to 100. It's like, all right, shut up. Why don't we like just do what everyone else does in music and make stuff sound cool, process the sound, like evolve the sound, do different things. I think like it's case in point example of like how good things could sound if we even just did basic amounts of processing. Like, why doesn't every drum corps have a properly recorded and processed and edited version of their
That's
their
what I
audio,
love about what
like a studio rendition of their show.
Like, percussion videos and have years too when they're able to get the copyright stuff figured out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're like one of the only groups that do it. It's crazy. I guess copyright's a lot of it, but like, I don't know. I don't feel like, at least your drum line is like not really that copyright.
But something that we've done that I feel like really sets us apart from like most every other thing, other than like maybe Monsters Inc., is we put mics. We close mic the instruments. You know, we for the snare drum video, we had like SM57s right on that bottom head. We had some condensers on the bass drums. We had SM57s on the top drums, I believe.
Nice.
Yeah.
SM57s are dynamic mics, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty much like the standard ones that any front ensemble uses for their mallet instruments. We tried using a few different mics like as we went through the couple bass drum videos, and I remember when we recorded Curfew, we had like SM57s on top 2 and condensers on bottom 3, and it was just like the top 2 sounds so like something about the way the SM57 like compresses the sound just works so well for percussion.
Yeah. No, it makes sense because like those dynamic mics are generally designed for live performance, is my understanding. So like they're designed to be involved in like loud circumstances, whereas like I feel like compressor mics are generally ideal for like your perfect circumstance in a studio where you're sitting there in like a controlled sound environment and you want this like warm, full-bodied recording, you know. Makes sense to me that when we're doing drumline, which is so loud, like these dynamic mics shine through because you want this like more raw with less like underlying background noise kind of version of the sound.
And
it's like
I feel like
what I expect would be best
definitely
there.
like getting that sound like with the close mics with the dynamic mics is something that's really setting us like our sound apart from everything else that we're getting from marching percussion. And so yeah, I feel like that like definitely adds to it.
Yeah, because it's like that's kind of like the road that you guys get to and like should forge down is like how do you evolve the studio sound of drumline. It's like that's more of your niche compared to this whole world of like people recording live drum lines in the wild, you know. One thing I noticed with these dynamic mics too, I'm real curious to see if you guys noticed this. Nothing's ever sounded dirtier to me like than when you listen back to the actual raw audio file of like what the mic picked up that your drumline sounded like. Dude, God, every time I've tried to like record my bass drums at United or anything like that, I'd always listen back and I'd be like, "Oh, we're not ready."
The struggle with
we're not ready
those,
yet.
like making those short videos. Is I'll play it back and I'll think it sounded great. I have my in-ears that I wear, and it sounds great. And then I'll listen to it back. And I'm like, nope, we can't have that.
Yeah.
We got to do it again. And a lot of times that creatively
in post.
That's when I started. Like we started making the multiple angles with the videos. Just because we're pretty much it's a little trick. Just to we're or at least I pretty much ad lib everything in the shorts. And we usually switch up the angles, and it helps have that sometimes because I said earlier, like we're here to entertain, but I do want to make sure I'm doing the best thing I could.
I mean, of course, yeah. I mean, I feel like every artist would feel that way too. Like you want to get the best version of your craft out there that you can put out there. But it's like it's good to recognize it's kind of like a relief, honestly, being in like more entertainment based drum lines to remember like, oh, it's okay.
Oh yeah.
It's okay.
Absolutely.
That was a bad rep. It was fine. We're not out
really
here competing with Vanguard.
Like that
we're
old
gonna be
mentality
okay.
of, we're only competing with ourselves. Like just every video, I just try to make it better than the last, like in terms of my performance.
That's awesome, man. I love what you guys do. I probably am going to kick up something similar sometime in the near future just for like music that I make on my own. Something that I wish that like plenty more people in the marching arts would do realistically. It's like so many people just age out and that's it for them performing. They're not really going to continue to play their instrument. They're going to maybe teach, but they let that skill kind of go by the wayside that they spent so much time developing. I think like projects like what you guys do should be a good inspiration to like all sorts of performers out there that like, hey, you can just like continue barreling down this road that you've like stormed down from age 14 to 21. Like you could just take those skills and you could go have even more fun with it as an adult on your own than like potentially you even had doing like core style band. I hope it inspires other people. I've at least found it kind of inspiring. So I was happy we were able to have you guys on the show today and, get to share it with our audience as well. Is there anything that you guys would maybe want to leave our audience with before we go? At least tell them your social media handles.
Oh, yeah. Instagram, _music, TikTok, _block, YouTube, just fourth block. That's the only one we were able to get just the pure form.
Fourth block.
Yeah, shout out Long Beach, all of SoCal, shout out Bakersfield, support independent music, protect trans kids, free Palestine.
Fantastic. I'm awesome. It's awesome that you guys came on here. And everybody else, if after you're done going and checking out Fourth Block's page, if you haven't already done so, I don't know how you made it 45 minutes into this show as a listener without having done so, but follow us at On a Water Break on all social media platforms for more awesome content like this. We like to try to branch further and further away from just the strict, DCI and WGI kind of talking points that everyone else hears about. So,
of course,
I can't wait to have more talks like this about independent art in the future. Thank you guys both for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep.
The On a Water Break podcast was produced by Jeremy Williams and Christine Reams. The intro and outro music was produced by Josh Lyda. To learn more, visit lydamusic.com. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.